There is a MAGA guy named Dave Rubin. We haven't talked about him in a very, very long time, so just to introduce you to him, he's another one of these figures, and in the first clip that I have for you, we'll see two of them in one conversation, interestingly enough, that I've explained to you before, is sort of making their career on the idea that they're not just a partisan, they're sort of in the middle, or they used to be in the left, and they're floating above politics, and they're enlightened, but they somehow only spit out right-wing talking points, right? So it's giving centrist or liberal credibility to MAGA ideologies. And we see this a lot with figures like Tulsi Gabbard, or Russell Brand, or Dave Rubin, where often you came from the left, and then I hate to describe it as this, because I try not to just act like I know someone's intentions, but I have it on good authority that these individuals are doing sort of a grift where then you only pump out right-wing content, but you're giving people the sense that, see, even the former liberal or even the I'm floating in the middle person is only saying good things about Trump and negative things about Biden, right? So that's what we hear. And here you'll get a sense of that, where to push the idea that this is all rigged against Trump and unfair, him now appealing his conviction, Dave Rubin articulates an idea that is so ridiculous on its face. And then you dig a little deeper and it's even more ridiculous. So let's take a look at it. This clip will get to Megyn Kelly, who also is doing a lot of MAGA nonsense, but at least here she has to fact check Dave Rubin. And it's so embarrassing. A couple bits of credit before I play. I saw this covered by the Majority Report, so this is why I want to do this segment, so credit to them for that. And this account where they got it from, and I'm getting it from Dave Rubin Clips 2, I think it's called. It is. And that's the account that put together this compilation. So he went on Russell Brand, he did it on his own show, he wanted Megyn Kelly to explain this idea that's such a bombshell. And there's a little issue with his bombshell, though.
I don't know if you know this, but when they appeal this thing, it gets appealed to the Supreme Court of New York, obviously not to the Supreme Court of the United States. The Supreme Court of New York has 5 black female judges. Now, I don't judge anyone based on the color of their skin or on their gender. However, it is virtually, someone ran the numbers on this and one of my guys can correct me, it's virtually impossible statistically to have a court makeup of 5 black women. You know what I mean? So DEI and diversity did get these women, at least some of them, the job. So then you have to think, do they all kind of think the same thing? And do they think judicially the same thing? And
I'm going to really quickly pause your viewing of this video to request that you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. I think almost 70% of our audience, as we talked about before, is not subscribed to the channel. That's crazy town. If you could please click it, I would greatly appreciate it. Okay. We're going to come back to that. In a little bit, I'm going to bring in our legal expert to explain the absurdity of what's being said by Dave Rubin. He doesn't understand the first thing about the topic that he's talking about. It's stunning. And that will be brought up by Megyn Kelly. But think about the sentence that he just said. So they have these 5 black women. So maybe are they all going to think the same? What? What does that mean, Dave? Oh my gosh.
That they all kind of think the same thing about Trump. And what a horrible thing to have to think about, that just because of someone's skin color and gender that... But they're going to file the appeal to go to the Supreme Court of New York because this is a New York trial. We showed you video about a month ago. It's 5 black women because of diversity. Now, oddly, the diversity they care about is always about skin color. Somehow the left's diversity ends up with 5 black women being in charge of the Supreme Court of New York. So do you think, now I don't know all of their judicial beliefs, these 5 women, but do you think that they probably think similar things and they probably don't like Donald Trump and that's probably how they got the job in the first place? Like, do you think, is that a crazy conspiracy theory? I know you know.
Okay, and then we get to the good part, but if you don't know why this is crazy, just get ready. You're about to have the sweetest little treat you've had all week, because this is so embarrassing and he's so proud of himself. And yes, he's being so racist. That's what this is, okay? And he doesn't know it, but he's making a fool of himself.
On the appeal side, there are 5 black female Supreme Court justices in New York.
By the way, how proud of one point can you be, okay? I get it. I've made some points. I'm like, oh, that landed nicely. So I'll repeat it. But he's exuding pride. He's so proud of this point. Goodness gracious.
I know you know this, that on the appeal side, there are 5 black female Supreme Court justices in New York. They wanted diversity, and they actually got the least diverse thing. Now, I know, of course, that your skin color and gender...
The Supreme Court is the lowest court in New York. Court of Appeals is the highest court.
Wait, so the Supreme...
There's not 5 female...
Oh, so it's not going to the New York Supreme...
No, I know New York is a wacky...
Oh, okay.
New York has a weird name for its courts. Supreme Court is the lowest court, is the trial court.
So that's not the appeals court?
No.
Oh, well, that's refreshing.
It'll go up to the appellate division, first department.
I like being corrected on air, by the way. That's actually very refreshing.
That's good news.
Yeah.
This is great, Megyn. I'm having a ball. I've been saying this for a couple weeks now.
Supreme Court is the lowest court.
I just want to watch it again. It's sort of like the universe going, all right, you're going to make this vile point. I'm going to get you in the butt, all right? And you're going to have to experience a public embarrassment like this. I'm trying not to use too provocative language, but...
It's the trial court.
So that's not the appeals court?
No.
Oh, well, that's refreshing.
It'll go up to the appellate division, first department.
I like being corrected on air, by the way. That's actually very refreshing.
It's good news.
Yeah.
And then it'll go up to the Court of Appeals.
So it goes to them first.
First, it'll go to the appellate division, first department,
right,
which is the area that he was tried in, like Manhattan. And then it'll go up to the Court of Appeals, which is our highest court. Right. I know. I don't know why they call the Court of Appeals the highest court.
Interesting. All right. Well, at least I had a
But anyway, I mean,
look, a legit error. Okay.
No, well, your error was legit. Lots of people are confused about how New York labels it. Fine. But why you made that error, why you chose to bring that out, was not legit. And before I bring in our legal expert to explain, as was noted by Megyn Kelly, he has it flipped around. So the trial that just happened was at the Supreme Court level. So you want to be appealing to that. You'd be appealing to the appellate and then the appeals, Court of Appeals. And again, I totally understand not having this all straight in your head unless you're about to go make a point like the one he was making. If you're going to make that point, you better be ready to explain the nitty and the gritty of the New York judicial system. And by the way, he's trying to make this point that the one Supreme Court, of the 9 or something, 5 of them are black women, and that's impossible, and there has to be some conspiracy. He's referring to a court, and there was a story about the historic nature of the 5 black women on one of the courts. But at the Supreme Court level in New York, you have like 62 courts. So he's just all jumbled. But again, his confusion's not what's funny or what we should mock or be opposed to. It's that he's making such a disgusting point and trying to stoke hate in his audience, stoke that fear and those vile feelings by evoking the race of women that are unrelated to where Trump will be appealing. And it would be even worse if they were, it would be just as bad if they were related. And trying to, again, evoke that hatred and those disgusting feelings is crazy. And then to know you're going to say something that's crazy and not even study up before it blows my mind. So with that being said, I do want to bring in our legal expert, Aaron Barnes. I thought it'd be fun to make this a little bit formal, a nice lesson, a legal lesson for Dave Rubin, because clearly he needs it. And honestly, it is sort of interesting how New York's judicial system is set up, and so it's informative for all of us. But Aaron, what was so absurd legally? I talked about in other ways, but legally about what Dave Rubin just said.
Yeah, so New York has to be different, right? So New York's legal system is completely different than your average state in that they call their trial court level, which is the lowest level court in the state, their Supreme Court. And then their appellate courts are the appellate division and then the New York Appellate Court, which is the highest court. So typically when you hear state Supreme Court, you would think it's the highest court in the state. But in New York, it's actually the complete opposite. It's the lowest court in the state. So Dave Rubin is unfortunately has likely never practiced in New York. I don't even think he's a lawyer and really didn't do his research here, because there are dozens of New York, quote unquote, Supreme Courts, because each division in New York, civil, criminal, probate, they all kind of are all appearing in front of a New York Supreme Court as a trial court, as the lowest level court. So his arguments are completely illogical. Here, Donald Trump, if he wants to appeal, Judge Merchan was a judge of the Supreme Court. If he wants to appeal, he goes to the first appellate or an appellate division. There are 4 appellate divisions. I'm not sure exactly which one here, but there are 4. And then if he is not successful, he can then request to appeal to the New York Appellate Court or the New York Court of Appeals. And that is not a guaranteed appeal. That is an appeal that he can request, and it'll be up to the New York Court of Appeals to grant it or not.
And I do want to emphasize that the reason Dave Rubin should be mocked for this is not because everyone should know this. Totally understandable to assume the highest court in a state would be the Supreme Court. It's that, number one, he said, my guys ran the numbers on this, did some research on this. And also, he's making such, and you all know I'm very mindful of when I use this term. I don't overuse it. He's making a racist point. Oh, they put some black females, so they're all going to think the same so that they can take down Trump. What? If you're going to make a point like that, don't. But if you're going to, give us the respect of doing your research. And the fact that he would be ready to say something that he knows is going to be so provocative and wrong, but in his mind, provocative and fire people up. And it plays into this conspiracy theory about how the system's being rigged against Trump, so he's going to have his case heard by 3 black women. But he doesn't bother to make sure that he has the strongest argument and at least understands the system that he's lying about. That's the brutal part, Aaron.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think ultimately when you go down to what Dave Rubin is saying, it does definitely have several racist undertones. And I think it's a good thing that the judges on the New York Court of Appeals and in the first or second or third or fourth appellate district in New York, they don't really pay attention to what someone like Dave Rubin is going to say. They're going to view Donald Trump's case with complete impartiality, even if Trump supporters are going to attack them, their character, the merits of them being on the court, or what they look like in their appearance or the color of their skin. So I think here Donald Trump's appeal it's a long shot appeal in a lot of ways. We can talk about kind of the grounds, if any, he has for appeal, but this is not going to be a relitigating of the trial court. This is not going to be Judge Merchan 2.0. This is going to be select 1 or 2 or 3 minute legal issues that are going to be up on the in the appellate district, and then if he loses, he may be able to get to the New York Court of Appeals. But like I said, there's no guarantee there.
Yeah, so let's just, while we're on the topic, while I have you, dive into that. First question is, when would we see an appeal? And I'm assuming it's certain that Trump's going to appeal. Okay, so that's question 1. When will we see that actually happen? And then how long will we expect it to play out? And then I'd love for you to dive into what things will they be bringing up post-conviction as issues with the trial.
Yeah, so I'll take all 3 kind of separately. The first question, he will appeal. You can't appeal in New York until after you're sentenced. So July 11th or July 12th, he will file a notice of appeal. You have to file within 30 days of your sentencing. So that'll happen later next month. As far as timing on appeal, he will appeal, like I said, to the appellate district, the intermediary appellate court. That process, there'll be briefing, there'll be likely oral argument. That takes about 6 to 8 months. So imagine he submits a notice of appeal end of July, 6 to 8 months. You're talking about March or April of 2025 before we really get a decision there. And then afterwards, he will petition the New York Court of Appeals. Whether or not that's granted will take a few months. If it's granted, once again, briefing and oral argument, another 8 months. So that takes us into 2026. If it's not granted, he'll go all the way to the Supreme Court, which will be another 6 to 8 months. So all that's to say, we're likely not going to get a resolution until early 2026, probably at the earliest here. And then as far as kind of the merits of what he's going to appeal, I think the top kind of issues that I see, number 1, are jury instructions. They will challenge a jury instructions that allowed essentially the jurors to find the underlying conduct. They didn't have to be unanimous in what the underlying criminal conduct was for the falsification. So they could have found either that he was intending to violate campaign finance law, or that I believe there were two other criminal conducts that they could have found. So they could have essentially been split 4-4-4, I believe 4-4-4, and it would have been fine. Trump's team is gonna argue that the jury should have been unanimous. I don't think that's gonna work. That's been around in New York for a long time. Other arguments, he can argue statute of limitations issues. He could argue the fact that a mistrial wasn't granted, that the trial should have been moved out of Manhattan, so it was an improper venue. So there are a number of legal issues. He'll argue that the evidence just wasn't sufficient to support the conviction, which everyone does on appeal, or almost everyone does on appeal. So they're going to throw kind of the kitchen sink at here, but they're going to be legal issues, not factual issues.
Gotcha. That's interesting. I did not think at all about the fact that this is long past the election that we'll be actually seeing this all be worked out. But that's not really the important thing for the American people at this point in time. I think just making sure people understand convicted felon, and across all these cases, so much troubling conduct. Aaron, where can people find you?
On all my social platforms, just at Aaron Parnas.